368 is pretty interesting because I think we are starting to get somewhere. I'm saying this because it seems dialogue has finally returned to the storytelling aspect of released chapters, and we've gotten a little bit more pages to work with. Before I get into my thoughts and overview of chapter 368, I'd appreciate a good old like and subscribe if you appreciate the content on the channel. Now let's get into the latest entry to the manga. Yo. As usual, the chapter is starting right where we left off in the previous, with the island in turmoil and its inhabitants surrounded by dark entities rising from the surface of Elfhelm. Guts raises himself after falling to the earth to be surrounded by dark malice chanting sacrifice and demanding an answer by the words, "Answer us." Cutting to Ishidro, Isma, Serpico, and Danan huddled up as they brace themselves for an attack by the same malice, but luckily the Skull Knight comes in and saves them. I mean, he finally shows up, but it's better late than never. He starts to speak in his cryptic language, but in his dialogue he says something that's very interesting that gives us more information, stating,
"The beings risen from the rift are what you would call the very foundations of the island, the original masters of this place."
Now these words kind of confirm my hypothesis from the previous video I made, asking questions in preparation for this release. My theory is that these are dark entities from the underbelly of the island. As we've seen in 361, there is an underworld where darker forces of magic lie. He states that these dark beings are the original masters of this place, which would mean that this paradise of Elfhelm was built on the foundations of dark forces. In a way, it kind of confirms to us, the readers, that magic is synonymous with the dark realm of the apostles and the God Hand. Kind of like how the idea of evil is the collective consciousness of what the humans perceive as God. Continuing his dialogue, the Skull Knight proceeds to attack the malice and tells the party of four to go because he can't guarantee their safety, but Ishidro refuses and stands his ground. Now people don't really like Ishidro because he is usually paired with Puck for comedy relief, but I've always found that he had great potential for character development. In this scene, I think this is another instance of him maturing and developing into a character that people will gravitate towards, kinda similar to Farnese. During the Elfhelm stay, while still being a comedic relief, there have been subtle hints of growth for Ishidro. He's constantly training in the AM, taking the time to spar with Casca once her mind returns to test his skill. His acrobatic feats have increased while terrorizing the young witches, and now most importantly, he is beginning to shed his fearful tendencies and channeling it into bravery. Following in Guts' footstep of throwing himself into the midst of battle, regardless of the odds being against him, and by the Skull Knight's response stating,
"This collapse was destined, but to struggle against it is man's fate, is it not?"
Ishidro is starting to be recognized as a struggler like Guts and King Geyserk before him. Cutting to another long-awaited comeback is the appearance of Roderick, accompanied by his crew Magnifico and Azan, detailing what they were up to slightly prior to the sundering of the island, preparing to depart Elfhelm due to the visions from the mermaids. While preparing to depart, the sundering erupts and the malice moves towards the shore, enveloping the land and melting whoever touches it down to the bone. While the brave Roderick signals his men to return to the ship, his thoughts of Farnese take shape as they are surrounded by the dark malice. We cut the Guts wallowing and whimpering as he witnesses Casca being taken away by Femto inside. Realizing there's nothing he can do to rescue Casca, uncharacteristically reaches out in despair as the unconscious Casca is moving far away from his grasp. Then the earth caves in on him as he's surrounded by the dark malice of the island. Now my overall feeling for this chapter, as stated before, is that I feel we're finally getting somewhere. We're getting some meaningful dialogue to ponder upon, and although it's better late than never, absentee characters like Skull Knight and Roderick are starting to come out the woodwork. Even though the art style is not to my liking for Berserk in general, I think it's starting to see some slight improvements in the final results. I think having a whole month to work on a chapter has garnered the time to put in the necessary touch-ups that Meteor would likely work on. It's still not perfect, of course, but it's better than the last 3 rush releases. Yet there's this one thing I don't quite understand here. Like, I think it's possible that Guts is being mischaracterized. He almost seems to be giving up, especially at the end of the chapter, because that's not what Guts does. He fights until the bitter end. He had all the smoke for Griffith when the Moonchild transformed him into him, and all of a sudden when he sees Casca being taken away, he starts to break down in despair. Like, I understand that Casca is literally all he has left to love from the Golden Age, but a sight like that usually would send him into a frenzy. I think they're trying to play off Guts not keeping the promise he made to himself to never lose Casca again in the mining cave, and it's likely going to break his morale or something. But, pun intended, the smug face on Griffith having the gall to touch Casca and raping her, and then tainting their unborn child should make Guts go berserk and start running after them. But I don't know, maybe he will pop up out of the debris and develop a new power-up or something. Who knows? We'll see next month with chapter 369. 368 was okay, and a slight improvement from the last releases. I'm going to reserve my judgment on how I feel about the treatment of the main character thus far, but we shall see as things progress in the storytelling. What did you all think of the latest chapter? Are you satisfied with the latest entry, or are you detestable what Koji and the others are doing to Meteor's life work? Let me know in the comments as you subscribe and hit that bell to stay locked in for more Berserk content coming down the pipeline. You know the vibes. It's Kaizoku Sleven. Appreciate you.